We'd like to now proceed to our next session, which is a keynote by Mr. Huzefa Motiwala, Director Systems Engineering, India and SAC at Palo Alto Networks. And before I invite him on stage, just a quick reminder to all of our audiences to keep tweeting about the event, share with us your feedback on social media using the hashtag AISS 2021. And you can also, in fact, tag us on Twitter using our Twitter handle at the rate DSCI underscore connect. And do also watch out for the DSCI Excellence Awards. We are going to be felicitating the contributors in the field of data protection and security at 6 p.m. And of course, also announce the winners of the DSCI Innovation Box that happened last evening. And once again, a quick reminder about the leaderboard. You can accumulate points. You can see there is a stack of gold coins on the top right corner screen of your screen, and refer to the point distribution chart in order to find out how you can accumulate the maximum number of coins. And the top three winners, as we also announced yesterday, are going to win cash prizes. So with that, without any further ado, I'm going to now invite uh, Mr. Huzefa Motiwala from Palo Alto Networks for the keynote.
Thanks, Samriddhi. Thank you, DSCI. Let me just share my screen. It's a pleasure to be here at the outset. Please confirm that you can see this. Is the screen presentation visible?
Yes, it is visible now. You can carry on. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this session today with me. Hope everyone is safe and doing well. My name is Huzefa Motiwala. I'm the pre-sales director for Palo Alto Networks, India and SOC. And today I'm going to demystify the approach to zero trust. What is zero trust? Why this is the right time and how to do it. Promise to keep it succinct. So let's get started. At the outset, I think in the last couple of years, we've seen some unprecedented rise in the nature, type, and volume of cyber attacks. I mean, it's a given, right? And everybody who's who, your uncles and aunts even included, is talking about zero trust. Just Google zero trust. And so you'll see how many different results you see, and different vendors talk about it very, very differently. You have the network security vendors talk about it in one way, and you have the proxy in the cloud vendors talk it about in a different way. And then you have the endpoint security vendors talk about it in a third way. And then you have the identity and access management vendors talk about it. And then you have the cloud security vendors. Everyone is talking about zero trust in a very, very different way. And what I want to do, what I want to show you today is what is that zero trust enterprise, right? And how you take all of these different zero trust components and put them into one thing. So the first thing we know, and at the outset we need to start with, is zero trust is very, very important. Why? Because even the president of the United States has mandated zero trust architecture within the federal government. So I want to take a step back, and I want to start understanding the concept of trust. It's really interesting, right? So if you think about it, everything we do in cybersecurity is about trust. Can I trust this connection? Well, here's a firewall to help you decide whether to trust that connection or not based on the IP address. Can I trust a file just showed up on that endpoint here? Oh, here's antivirus for you. Can I trust that user? Well, here's two-factor authentication, right? Cut the chase, mid-90s. Can I trust the content of the connection? Well, IDS, IPS. Can I trust the URL? Here's URL filtering. Can I trust this? Can I trust that? Each one of these concepts is really about, can I trust something or can I not trust something, right? And that was the industry that has been delivering for the last 30 years in what I call the band-aid approach, right? Every time there was something new, there were some doubts as to whether we can trust that thing or not. A new set of solutions came up and helped customer decide whether to trust that thing or not, no matter what that was. And that's how the industry has been built, creating huge complexities on poorly integrated point solutions. Let me take an example and elaborate that. A user sitting in an office trying to access an application in a local data center, most customers will have a project for that, and they'll call it the data center firewall project. They'll buy a firewall, a data center firewall, do some tests here and there, some checks there for the user traffic, and be happy with that. And then if you take the same user with the same laptop sitting in a coffee shop trying to access a cloud application, which could be sitting in a public cloud, there'll be a completely different project for that. And what it'll call it the zero trust network access, ZTNA. And then we look at the proxy in the cloud and then the solution. And then the same user trying to access a SaaS application, that will be a third project. It will have called it as the cloud access security broker project, CASB. So in each of these cases, what we're trying to do is we are going to check different things. We'll go into, with a very different policy. We are going to look for different things, which means we are going to trust or not trust things differently. This needs a far more strategic approach, and zero trust is that modern security framework that fits this transformation, which brings us to the concept of implied trust. Right? Let's take the same user example and define zero trust, if I may say so. I have those two solutions for very two different use cases for the same user. For the same application, just different solutions. Whether the user, depending on whether the user is inside or outside, or the application is here or there. By definition, I check for different things. So in this case, I'll have some things that I trust, some other things that I implicitly trust. In the other case, in the coffee shop example, there will be some things which I trust, and the other things again I implicitly trust. There will be implicit trust in my decisions, which is the complete opposite of zero trust. Zero trust is all about removing all this implicit trust. It doesn't matter where the user is, where they are, what type of device they are using. Are they on Windows or Mac? Are they using Android or iPhone or iOS? Is it a corporate issued device, or is it their own PYOD? It doesn't matter what technology they use to connect, SD-WAN or IPsec, client-based VPN or clientless VPN. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what that application is. Is it a SaaS application, or is it an application deployed in the public cloud, or an application deployed in the traditional data center, in a private cloud? It doesn't matter. I am not going to trust anything. I'm going to do everything I can, no matter what the situation is, to decide whether I can trust or not trust each aspect, each aspect of what that user is trying to do. Right? I'm going to do this in the most strict way possible. Continuous validation at every stage of a digital interaction, and that's what zero trust is about. Right? And the interesting thing about zero trust is, number one, it makes the organization even more secure. If I don't have implicit trust, I go into each and everything, no matter what the situation is, and I don't have I don't have implicit trust, I'm more secure. The other thing it ends up doing is it ends up making the infrastructure far more simpler. I don't have those 10 different use cases anymore. One use case for a local user going into the data center, the other one going through a coffee shop, SaaS application, so on and so forth. I don't need to have all this different use case. I have one use case, and that makes the infrastructure simpler. And that's why you're hearing more and more about zero trust. It's more secure, makes things easier, it's cheaper, and it's better, right? So the question is, why now? I mean, in the last couple of years, again, the risk of repeating myself, and you've heard this probably many times, there's an unprecedented transformation happening, disruption across all the areas. There's around network, people are doing wide area network transformation, exploring SD-WAN, and this on the back of the hybrid work culture that came in and hit us, right? So there's all kind of transformation happening there. There's all kind of digital transformation happening in terms of applications and the adoption of cloud, right? Why? Because it promises to be the agile, scalable architecture that people born in the cloud are going to. At the back of all this, and the amount of, as I said, I started with this, right? The amount of attacks that we have seen, there is hell number of SecOps transformation which is happening related to SOC. The plethora of alerts that when we are facing right now, it's unprecedented, right? So this is probably where zero trust can be a guiding principle for securing this new environment, this new world, right? And taking this modern, more holistic approach reduces complexity, security sprawl caused by these point solution. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the zero trust enterprise. So at this point of time, I would like to talk a little bit more in terms of what actually it means to be a zero trust enterprise, including some of those key considerations, best practices, and security tools required, right? So let's get into it straight away. So zero trust, uh, is a great approach to security, right? But many organizations who struggle to put zero trust into practice, where do we prioritize? Where do I start? How do I make it more actionable, right? So at Palo Alto Networks, to make zero trust actionable for the customer, we are focused on three key pillars. First, we look at users. We can't assume anything about the user based on where they are, etc. Right? As a general rule, users and their identity are a great place to start when thinking about zero trust. Next, we apply zero trust for application. In these microservices-led, service-oriented architecture world, we cannot trust various components of application. And last, infrastructure, everything from IoT to supply chain, these must be addressed from a zero trust standpoint. So let's double click each one of them. Zero trust for users. So what's zero trust for users? Where a user, no matter where they are, no matter what they're trying to access an application, we cannot trust their identity. So we'll do whatever we can to make sure they are who they say they are. We're not going to trust the device that they are using, whether it's a laptop, phone, tablet. So you have to assume nothing and have zero trust around anything that has got to do with that device. Then we're going to not trust anything about that access, whether they're allowed to access something, whether they're allowed to access a function within an application, whether they're allowed to do different things. We're not going to trust that. We're going to check each and every time they try to do something, and we're not going to trust that transaction itself, last but not the least. So even if you allow them to access something, doesn't mean the end of the road. We are going to look at the transactions to make sure there's no malware going, there's no command and control traffic, no data leakage, and so on. So these are the different things that we need to do in order to implement zero trust for users. And then there's zero trust for application. Traditionally, applications were running in a data center behind this big firewall. And when applications were talking to each other or components of application, what we now call is the microservices architecture, there was almost no security. Why? Because we assume it's behind, it's all secured and done like that. We assume they can do whatever they want. Now that application are in the public data center, in public clouds, for some reason, customer view them very differently and they want to run more and more checks. Of course, the zero trust philosophy is you're going to do it in the public cloud. You have to do it as well in the traditional data center, no exceptions. You have to do it in your private cloud. Why just public cloud? Do it all across. And here also, the same four things we need to check. You have to identify the application itself when an application A talks to application B or a component A talks to a component B, no matter where they are. We need to make sure that these are the right things talking to each other and nothing has been replaced. We cannot trust that workload on which the application is running, whether it's a whole server or a VM or a container or serverless function, so on. We have to trust nothing about that and verify each and every aspect of that. When applications talk to each other, access each other, we have to run the full suite of checks. And again, once we allow application A to talk to application B, we have to look inside, make sure there's nothing crazy going on within that transaction. Yeah, so far with me? So let's look at the last piece, which is the infrastructure, the third aspect of zero trust. Infrastructure, meaning our routers and our switches and all the other traditional infrastructure IoTs, whether these are industrial IoTs or corporate IoTs like cameras, medical devices, other healthcare IoTs, whatever it is. And also all the software and other things we buy from our suppliers, classic SolarWind, right? So whether it's something like SolarWind or source control management system, whatever it is, we cannot trust it. We cannot trust the identity of the users that are using it, our administrators. We cannot trust the piece itself. Was it switched on the way? The DL we just downloaded, for example, the SolarWind, is that real or not? Can we trust it or not? So we cannot trust the workload, the device, the access. We need to implement the least privilege access. Whenever we allow our users to access these services or these devices, and of course the transaction itself, we have to make sure that it's not a component trying to connect to a place they are not supposed to connect, and there's no malware running inside. So very similar to zero trust for users and zero trust for application, we have zero trust for infrastructure. Now, interestingly, if we take all of those and put together all those three together and put them in a matrix, it looks like that. Very, very similar, right? So you have to do similar things, whether it's zero trust for users, for application, or infrastructure. It's always about identity, about the device or the workload, about the access, and about the transaction. The funny thing is, When you talk to different vendors in the industry that claim to do zero trust, what they are really doing is focusing on a single cell in these 12 cell metrics, and sometimes even less than that. For example, when you talk to an endpoint security vendor, of course, they do zero trust. Well, what they really do is zero trust for user when it comes to the device. So it's a small aspect. When you talk to the proxy and the cloud vendors, they say, of course, we do zero trust. We are zero trust. Well, in reality, what they do is the access part for zero trust for the users. And if you want to still secure the device, then you have to go and go to a partner of theirs. It's a SaaS application. You go to this CASB partner of theirs. If you want to secure the transaction, partner with a DLP security partner. Go on, whatever, on and on and on. This aspect of security just goes on. And the same is true for zero trust for application. You have different cloud security vendors that focused on different, not even a complete cell, part of a different cell that you see here. And the same is true, of course, for infrastructure, zero trust for infrastructure. So really, if you want to be zero trust enterprise, meaning you want to take these three different aspects of zero trust for users, application, and infra, and implement it across everything, you will have to start band-aiding again, work with 20 different vendors and everything, integrate everything together, or come to Palo Alto Networks. Once you choose your identity and access management vendor, where we integrate with your solution of choice, example, Okta, with our platform, you can achieve complete zero trust for enterprise. You can become zero trust enterprise by taking our network security platform, implementing here, where you see these yellow cells, and then you take the Cortex XDR, that's the extended detection and response system. This is where you see those green cells for your devices and workload, and takes Prisma Cloud, where you see the blue cells, complete end to end. Your favorite, partner it with or plug it in with your favorite identity access management, and you have complete zero trust. So Prisma Cloud covers it completely in the complete life cycle of the application, right? So that's how you reach. And believe it or not, customers are subscribing to this, and they are buying the platform more and more because they have a zero trust strategy, because they believe in zero trust. They can get much better security and a much more simplified architecture. And I believe going in the future, this is only going to become a very, very more and more important decision that you need to make as to whether to use a specific vendor that sells specific features, maybe like proxy or cloud security or endpoint security, this or that, and so on, or you use something like Palo Alto Networks for the complete set for the platform. Now, one last but important aspect, what is the role of SOC in this? What is the role of SOC in a zero trust architecture, right? So according to me, or according to us in Palo Alto, zero trust, you cannot trust any decision that was made previously. Let me repeat that. You cannot trust any decisions that was made previously. You need to recheck everything, and that's the role of SOC. Assuming all things failed, at every time, at every level, that decision that you took, your product took, or your solution that took that for that platform that you've kept there, the SOC needs to keep checking that decision. And that's where I think SOC does it beautifully, right? Because it can double check all those trust decisions that have already been made using tools which are focused on behavior analytics, right? UBA, threat hunting, anomaly detection, the correlation rules in the same. All of that come together and help check that trust decisions and make it even better and better and better. And I think our Cortex portfolio, we have some very, very strong capabilities here, including the XDR, SOAR, the attack surface management product called Expanse, all coming in together beautifully and reassessing trust. So let's bring it all together. All right. I think this is my favorite slide because it kind of ties everything back. One simplified architecture, an example here is a digital interaction of a user connecting to an application via all of these infrastructure, right? It could be anywhere, any application sitting anywhere. So before a user can even connect, we protect the device with the Cortex XDR agent. When a user tries to connect to the network, we authenticate using Prisma Access, the Global Protect, or if you're running on the infrastructure, right? The user ID technology, which comes from our physical or virtual firewall, can help that. Our device ID technology, again, which comes with our physical or virtual firewall for our IoT security capabilities, providing visibility and enforcing threat prevention for IoT devices, right? Because as I said, the device and workload could be anything. Prisma Access, again, coming back to this network piece of it, it authenticates the front end of an application and carries that same information as the user moves through the infrastructure to the next set of physical virtual firewalls, which could be in that cloud. It could be a public cloud application with a microservices architecture. So again, that container series or a CN series firewall um, uh, checks the container identity and the application that's performing the transaction connection, as well as applies all kind of right threat prevention capability right there, assessing the content there. And once the microservices architecture becomes too small, past the layer 7, we have the micro identity based firewall. So it all comes around beautifully. Prisma, cloud continues to verify the technology, using all those perimeter security technologies right there, IPS, sandboxing, anti-malware. And finally, the SOC coming together, right? Checking each of these actions, analyzing all the logs, all the data collected at each steps, and taking action using the XDR sponsored store. So where do you start? That's the next logical question, right? These capabilities are also supported not only by our Unit 42 Threat Intel research team, but also our professional services who can help you no matter where you are in your zero trust journey, right? You need to take a step. You can approach us. We can help you map that out. And that includes everything, including discovery and asset identification, architecture, and the overall zero trust implementation, right? We can help you at each stage, irrespective of where you are in this journey. It's an important decision. It's an important journey, and we'll partner you all along. So now with that you understand what is zero trust, what is a zero trust enterprise, and how the different things that Palo Alto Network does deliver together the zero trust enterprise. I would like to thank you very much for listening. Hope it was comprehensive, actionable, without any BS, enough for you to get in touch with us. Thousands of organizations are already on this path with us, and we are helping them make each day safer than the day before. Stay safe. Thank you.